Hey, good evening, ladies and gentle drunks. My name is Kevin Olson. I'm a recovered alcoholic. I want to welcome you all to the fourth dimension. Big book study, that is. I know I'm glad you guys are all here. I know I'm certainly glad I'm here. I never feel more alive than when I'm sharing the miracle of God's recovery in the program of Alcoholics Anonymous and the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. In the program of Alcoholics Anonymous that I discovered in a book called Alcoholics Anonymous. And what do you say we share that book together tonight? As we always do, guys, we're going to kick off with the set-aside prayer. It goes a little something like this. Sing along if you know the words. God, please help me to set aside everything I think I know about you, about me, about my fellow man, and about the 12 steps. And please allow me to gain a fresh new vision, perspective, and understanding of what you, what me, what my fellow man, and the 12 steps are all about. Amen. And as this is the fourth dimension big book study, I always like to read the two parts of our book that refer to the fourth dimension. So first of all, on page 8, Bill Wilson writes that I was soon to be catapulted into what I like to call the fourth dimension of existence. I was to know happiness, peace, and usefulness in a way of life that is incredibly more wonderful as time passes. And then on page 25, Bill Wilson writes that we have found much of heaven and we have been rocketed into a fourth dimension of existence of which we had not even dreamed. Okay, ladies and gentle drunks, brothers and sisters, we are going to be catapulted. We're going to be rocketed. And for the sake of the tradition and custom of the fourth dimension big book study, everyone who will, please put one hand up like this. And everybody put another hand up like this. And everybody go, oh yeah. Oh, I never get tired of that. I love it. All right, I'm happy to be here. I'm happy you guys are here. I'm in a little bit different surroundings than I normally am. I'm at my parents' house right now. I came to help them out with some stuff to be of maximum usefulness to my parents, and I just had a lovely dinner and happy to be here with you guys. And so I'm working from kind of a different laptop and a different situation than I normally do. So Brad is kind of handling the audiovisual technology in the background and going to be presenting some stuff. And I appreciate that very much, Brad. Thanks for your help. Rob is also not here. Tonight he had a situation, a positive one with his son who is doing some other stuff. So we're very happy for Rob and we'll be happy to see him again next week. Okay, so tonight we're going to be kicking off a chapter called There Is a Solution. And There Is a Solution is obviously a very beautiful chapter. A couple of the things in the chapter, There's a Solution. Brad, if you would be kind enough to throw the second slide I sent you, Problem, Solution, Program of Action.
Yes.
Okay, so we are gonna in this chapter, There Is a Solution. This chapter will focus a little bit, in addition to the doctor's opinion and Bill's story that we've been through already. We will see the problem identified in this chapter, but this chapter is where, for the first time, we're going to see the point at which the solution actually comes alive in Alcoholics Anonymous. And we're going to kind of connect some dots back to the early history of AA. We may or may not get that far into the chapter tonight, but this chapter in particular shows us where we originally get step 2 from, our solution being a vital spiritual experience, when Dr. Carl Jung says to Roland Hazard, yes, there are exceptions to cases such as yours. Here and there, we have seen people have what we call vital spiritual experiences. Okay, and we're going to talk about that in this chapter, as well one of the other very important key pieces of information for me, and one of the key things that I needed to understand in order to really get a better grasp of what it means to be a real alcoholic, as opposed to other people that I saw in my life that were able to drink moderately, or even people that were even hard drinkers. We're going to learn in this chapter in particular the difference and distinguish between the moderate drinker, the hard drinker, and the real alcoholic. And on that note, Brad, while I'm thinking of that, I have another slide that I want to send you. But if you wouldn't mind, yeah. So that's great, Brad. You can take that down for now. Guys, just give me 1 second. I had a sponsee who was going to join us tonight, and he had a cycle story loaded up. And I was going to get him to share it tonight. But just for one more time, hey, I see Mark there in the background as well. Hello, Mark. Great to have you. Thanks for joining us. Let's jump into the cycle very quickly, Brad, as well, if you wouldn't mind sharing that. Yep. Guys, I just want to highlight again, this is what we call the problem. So when we look at that previous slide, problem, solution, program of action, this is what we characterize as our problem. This is the cycle of alcoholism. And the way that I work with my sponsees, and that I would encourage you to consider working with your sponsees as well, is that we find 5 stories from our own life that match this cycle. 5 times in my own life where I made that firm resolution, swore off. I sang what we call it the alcoholic national anthem. I'm never going to drink like that again. Okay, that's it. I'm done. I'm through, and I mean it. And maybe I'm going to try and do it on my own, or maybe I'm turning into a treatment center again, going into detox. That's it. I'm done. I'm through. Then what happens? Well, what happens is I get sober, and I get physically sober, and I get mentally nuts. Okay, and I suffer from what Dr. Silkworth calls restlessness, irritability, and discontent. Okay, spiritual sickness, and I suffer from emotions that make life difficult. Okay, and those emotions skew my perception of reality. Okay, I don't, my grand sponsor Clancy used to say, I don't drink because I'm a drinker. I drink because I'm a thinker and I'm a feeler. Alcoholics feel things much more intensely than other people. Clancy used to joke that we're like people that don't have coating on our wiring. There's no insulation on our wiring. Okay, we're just out there and we're just like raw exposed nerves in the world, and feeling that type of emotion, feeling that type of pain, feeling that restlessness, irritability, discontent, feeling that spiritual sickness skews our perception of reality. I'm unable to distinguish the true from the false. I believe the lie. I pick up the first drink, trigger the allergy, enter the well-known stages of a spree, emerging remorseful with a firm resolution not to drink again. Okay. And this is repeated over and over. And unless I can experience an entire psychic change, and remember, we've talked about this, guys. What we are seeking in Alcoholics Anonymous is not a psychic change. That's just what Dr. Silkworth, a medical doctor, called it. If a psychic change was sufficient, psychiatrists would get alcoholics sober. Okay, we're not here for a psychic change. We are here for what Dr. Carl Jung tells us in this chapter is what is required for me to overcome alcoholism. And that is a spiritual awakening. Yes, it's God of my understanding, but it is God. Okay, this is not just a psychic change. Okay, this is about me developing a relationship with this power. Okay, and how do I do that? By taking the remaining steps. That's what we do. We have a program of action that I can take to achieve this solution to overcome the problem. Okay, that's how it works. And, my friend Adam says all the time that Alcoholics Anonymous doesn't get me sober. The 12 steps don't get me sober. My home group doesn't get me sober. My sponsor doesn't get me sober. Prayer and meditation, service work, all of these things don't get me sober. What those things do is get me connected to the power, capital P power, and the power is what restores our sanity. Okay. And that's what we're going to talk about tonight. So let me see if Vic, is Vic on the call? I'm sorry that I can't see right now. Brad, if you could stop sharing for a moment, that would be great. I don't see that Vic is on the call just yet, but that's okay. Does anybody else, in the spirit of these cycle stories, in the spirit of being able to diagnose ourselves with as having, oh, there's Victor right now. Okay, we'll let Victor go second. I'd like to hear two cycle stories from you guys tonight, though. Okay, two times that you guys swore off, became spiritually sick in sobriety, had an insane thought, believed the lie, picked up the first drink, triggered the allergy, and you were gone. Can I get so Vic? Hey Vic, good to see you, buddy. We'll have you share in just a moment. But is there anyone else who would like to share a cycle story tonight? One of their own who feels confident and is brave enough to give it a shot. Anyone at all? Anyone at all? I will call on you if I don't get volunteers. I will call on you. I am going to I'm gonna ask Gail. I don't think I've heard you do a cycle story before. Would you like to do one for us?
Oh my God. Okay. I yeah, I guess the best one I can think of, because it's been so many years, it was back in the 70s and 80s. Anyway, no, the best one I can think of is in January 1st, 1980. I had been at a New Year's Eve party and made a total ass fool of myself. Had to be helped. You got the picture. Anyway.
Raise a hand if you already identify with this story.
Yeah. That had to be helped. Finish the sentence. Anyway, so woke up the next morning and I said, that's it. I quit.
Okay, so where is she on the cycle right now? She's at firm resolution. She's singing
Oh
the
yeah.
alcoholic national anthem, right?
Yeah. I'm gonna quit smoking too. Anyway, yeah. But anyway, gonna quit. And that worked for about 10 years.
Oh wow.
I don't know what happened, but anyway, and so after, now in that 10-year period, I would not want you talking to my daughter about what I was like. No, don't do that. No. I was into everything. Everything replaced alcohol. I was into dreams. I was into this. I was into that. I was into Jungian psychology. I met just everything, and into work, and life seemed to just take off for all I got. But I was evil, wicked, mean, and nasty, just ugly. Nothing was right. Nothing was wrong. Everything was wrong. The world done me wrong, don't you? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then one day, I lived in a duplex, and the new owner moved in, and I got to know her, a really neat lady. And she said one day, she says, I'm going over to White Spot for supper. You want to come with me? I said, sure. Sounds great. So we went over there, and we always had a lot of fun together. And we sat down, and she said, I think I'm gonna have a beer. And I looked at her and I said, I think I will too. Now, where that thought came from, now, behind that thought was, I have studied dreams, I've studied psychology, I've done this, I've done that. I probably was too hard on myself. And so anyway, and took that first sip of beer and thought, oh, okay, I think maybe I was too hard on myself, and I probably only finished half the glass and put it aside. And I can tell you a very short period of time after that, maybe a couple months, I was flat in my back in Motel Village in Calgary, uh, with that cold wave of death in the air. And I'm, part of the medical profession. I know what that cold wave is like. Maybe I was detoxing or whatever, and looking up at the ceiling and saying, "Uh-oh,
Yeah.
now I've pushed it too far. I don't think I'm gonna make it. I don't think I'm gonna make it." And yeah, I don't think I'm gonna make it. And at the last second, I thought, oh, I know what the problem is. I'm an alcoholic. The first time in my life, I was, what, 44 years old? I hadn't, no, 43 years old. First time in my life, I said, oh my God, I'm an alcoholic. That's what's wrong. And I've pushed it too far and I'm not going to make it. And then a spiritual, I had a combination spiritual experience, spiritual awakening, a lot like Bill's. Shortly after that, that's another story, which,
Yeah, so I'll just jump in. And so first of all, round of applause for Gail. Round of applause.
Yeah.
Round of applause.
Yeah,
That was
thanks,
excellent. That
Gail.
was perfect, Gail. And we can talk about the second part. We can talk about your step 2 story when we get there. But as far as the cycle story, that's brilliant. That's perfect. New Year's Eve comes through, devastated again, says that I'm gonna stay sober. That's it. Gets sober for 10 years and is restless, irritable, and discontent for 10 years. Okay. And we'll read about the man of 30 doing the same thing in our book when we get to the chapter more about alcoholism. But then she's sitting in the white spot and she doesn't have a drink. She doesn't have a drink at all. She has a thought. And the thought was, yeah, I'll have just a glass of beer one time, no problem. And I can't tell you how many times I've known alcoholics who went out and they had that one, and it's just that one at that time. And that's even more dangerous, man. And they have that one and it's not a problem, because then what can they tell themselves? See, I was wrong all those years. I made too big a deal out of it. No problem. So I guess I can drink tequila also. And then it all bets are off, man. All bets are off. That's an excellent, Gail. Okay, and Victor and I went through some of his cycle stories yesterday, and he was going to share one with us today as well. Victor.
Sure, my name's Victor. I'm an alcoholic.
Hi, Victor.
This is a few years back. I had already had my third and fourth impaired, swore off alcohol, started going to meetings, went to meetings for about 90 days. At that time, I was probably around 27, at taken a few college courses. Met a young lady in class who was spectacularly beautiful. Asked her out for dinner, and I was fortunate enough to go. We went out for dinner.
And at this point, Vic, just to be clear, at this point, you're going out for dinner. You're 90 days sober in AA. You've been going to lots of meetings.
Yeah.
Okay. And now you're going out for dinner with this lady. And probably no intention. Was your intention this night, I'm going to go out and get drunk?
No, absolutely
not at all. Not at all.
I was, as far as I was concerned, I was not going to drink again. My intent was to do the 90 meetings in 90 days, and I did more than that in those 90 days. So I didn't have any intention of drinking that night, but it was when we ordered, just prior to ordering, she ordered a glass of wine. And right at that moment, I just felt like I didn't feel right not having a glass of wine. I wasn't used to not drinking at that time. And I just ordered in order to fit in, really, like to take the pressure off. I thought I could have a drink, cover up my issue, and move on. And I drank for another 10 years every night until I blacked out.
Brilliant.
Yes.
Brilliant. Round of applause. That's brilliant, man. That's brilliant. And you know what? And Victor and I, if I can, I'm just going to add a little bit of color on your story from talking to you about it last night. Okay. So one of the things that I like to talk about when someone relapses, when someone drinks again, which if you're around AA for any appreciable length of time, people are going to come in and out. People are going to drink again. And it's going to be, yeah, me too. I was in and out of AA, and it's always like baffling. It's like, what happened? What do you mean you drank? I was at a meeting with you last week. What happened? Guys, we know what happened. That person became spiritually sick as a result of inactivity in the steps. They had an insane thought, believed the lie, picked up the first drink, triggered the allergy, and they're gone. It's uniform. That is our disease. The question to ask is not what happened. The question to ask is what wasn't happening. Okay. And when we talked to Vic, about that 90 days, Victor. What did we talk about last night? What wasn't happening? What didn't happen?
What wasn't happening, although I was going to the meetings, number one thing, I didn't have a sponsor. I wasn't reading the big book. I wasn't practicing the steps at all. I wasn't working on them. Although I was going and I would say, my name's Victor, I'm an alcoholic, and I thought I did step one. I thought I was doing it. I realized after I came back after that 10 years and I asked my sponsor to be a sponsor, that is when in my heart, I accepted or I admitted to let in that I was an alcoholic. And then my recovery started.
That's brilliant, Victor. One of the things I like to say is that hitting bottom, guys, it's not an event, it's not a situation, it's not a time, it's not a circumstance. It is a point where I am willing to begin taking directions and taking actions that I don't want to take, that I don't believe are going to work, being told to me by people that I don't even like, but I have no other alternative other than to start taking these actions. And when I start taking the actions, things begin to change. And Victor came and got a sponsor, started getting active in AA, started getting active in the big book. And you've been sober how long now, Victor? What did you tell me your date was?
25 years, October 15th.
Yeah,
Wow.
that's awesome. One last thing about Victor's story, because I think it's a really good one. And I want to point out one other thing. So Victor said, I had a thought. Okay, I had a thought that I could take just a couple drinks and it was going to be fine. That was the lie. But did you hear him say? What did he say before that? I felt like I wasn't going to fit in. I felt like people were going to think less of me. I felt like I wasn't enough. Then, do you see how the feelings came before the thought, before the lie, before the drink? You guys see what I'm saying about that? So excellent story, Victor. That's excellent. Very good. Okay, brothers and sisters, that's great. Let's get into the chapter. There is a solution. Page 17. So Brad's going to read for us. Thank you so much, Brad, for always being my right-hand man in this study. One of the other things that I always think is kind of my job, and I believe I kind of have a calling to do it, is to contemporize the big book for us. So there's a lot of historical references, even on this first page, on page 17, things that it's going to explain. I'm gonna try to make it relevant to us here in 2025, because the big book, again, April 10th, 1939 is when the big book was published. And I'm gonna try to interject a little bit and try to make it more relevant to us here in 2025. But again, what we're talking about here, really, there's two things in this chapter. One is what our solution is, and that's it. We'll actually get to that next week. The meeting between Carl Jung and Roland Hazard. We're going to talk about what our solution is, which is a spiritual awakening. But today, in particular, we're going to talk about, and thank God they gave us the keys to the kingdom here, brothers and sisters, in helping me understand the difference between moderate drinker, the heavy drinker, and a real alcoholic. And Brad, before we begin, I texted you one more graphic that do you have it ready to share when we get to that point?
It's ready to go.
Beautiful. All right, man. It's ready to go. I'm ready to go. Is everybody ready to go? Thumbs up if you're ready to go. Rock and roll. Let's do it.
Hey, everybody. Brad Slipper, recovered alcoholic. And although
Hey, Brad.
I'm not going to try and do Rob's part of the job. There's no way to do that part. So chapter 2, there is a solution. We of Alcoholics Anonymous know thousands of men and women who were once just as hopeless as Bill. Nearly all of us recovered, or nearly all have recovered. Sorry, they have solved the problem drink. They have
So I want to say something here. You guys will often hear me refer to myself as a recovered alcoholic. Why do I do that? Well, there's another example. Our book uses the word recovered 21 times, 20 times specifically in reference to an alcoholic who is no longer drinking, who has recovered. Do I mean I've recovered from every problem I have in life? No. Do I mean I've recovered from my gross emotional deformities? No. Do I mean I've recovered from all of my character defects? Of course not. Do I mean that as a result of the work in the program of action in the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous, that I have been connected to a power that has allowed me to recover from the necessity to have to drink? Yes, that is what I mean. I no longer succumb to the mental obsession or the physical allergy. I have been restored and recovered from alcoholism, physically and mentally. Okay, I have been restored to sanity through the grace of God and the program of action. And that is why our book refers to us as being recovered over 20 times. And if you want to talk more with me about that and why I do that, I'd be happy to. Back to you, Brad.
We are average Americans. All sections of this country and many of its occupations are represented, as well as many political, economic, social, and religious backgrounds. We are people who normally would not mix. But there exists among us a fellowship, a friendliness, and an understanding which is indescribably wonderful.
So I just want to say at this point, you need to understand there's like 100 sober alcoholics between New York and Ohio. Okay, some of them were in Cleveland, some of them were in Akron, Ohio. Obviously, some of them were in New York. But you have to understand that at that point, they were they had a lot more in common than a lot of us do in Alcoholics Anonymous worldwide. So like so many things in our book, that statement is so prophetic. If you think about how diverse, what a diverse community Alcoholics Anonymous is worldwide. And really, guys, that's thanks to Tradition 3, that the only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. We don't care anything else. We don't care about social background, religious background, ethnic background, political background. None of that matters. Okay. So all I'm pointing out is when it says we are people who normally would not mix, actually in 1939, it was, mostly upper middle class people in New York and Ohio. Now we are people around the world, worldwide, 2 million plus members, and from all different walks of life. One of my favorite jokes, and it's a really favorite joke of mine because we have a member at a group now who is a branch manager at a bank. The joke is Alcoholics Anonymous is the only place where you'll find the bank robber, the bank teller, and the manager of the bank all sitting together in the front row. Okay? We are people who normally would not mix. Anyway, back to you, Brad.
We are like the passengers of a great liner, the moment after rescue from shipwreck, when camaraderie, joyousness, and democracy pervade the vessel from steerage to captain's table. Unlike the feelings of the ship's passengers, however, our joy in escape from disaster does not subside as we go our individual ways. The feeling of having shared in a common peril is one element in the powerful cement which binds us, but that in itself would never have held us together as we are now joined.
Okay, just show of hands quickly. Who here has seen the movie Titanic? Guys, it's okay. You can admit it. Okay. Yeah. Okay. All right. Raise your hand, guys. Who knows who Jack is? Jack in Titanic. Leonardo DiCaprio, right? And who's Rose? Rose, Kate Winslet, right? Remember that? Okay. So this analogy of the camaraderie breaking out from steerage to captain's table. Okay. Jack was the poor guy. Remember that? Okay. Before he got the tuxedo on, he was poor. He was staying in a part of the ship called steerage, which means basically they were staying down where the luggage is. Okay. And eating like one cheese sandwich a day to survive. Okay. And then on the other end of that spectrum is not even first class. But there's a level above first class on these old ship liners called the captain's table. And if you had a certain kind of money, if you had old money and prestige and the right connections and the right family name, you could sit at the captain's table and you got the best of everything. Okay? The highest service available to anyone on that ship. What they're saying is, when the Titanic hit that iceberg, it didn't matter if you were Jack down in steerage or you were Rose sitting at the captain's table. When your butt hits that icy cold water, it does not matter where you come from. And alcoholism and addiction is just like that, isn't it? Okay. It is no respecter of persons. We come from all different walks of life. But the real headline here, guys, is something that I got wrong in AA for a long time. I thought that what held us together was that we're all in the same boat. We're all in the same boat. Isn't that right? That is not right. That is not what holds Alcoholics Anonymous together. The unity in Alcoholics Anonymous is not all based on the fact that we all identify with that cycle. The unity in Alcoholics Anonymous is based on something much stronger. And I found this out the hard way. I remember sitting in treatment one time, and I was crazy and I was trying to impress people and I was trying to be intelligent. And I was trying to sound smart and sound like I knew what I was doing and trying to make people laugh and all that stuff. And I kept saying, we're all in the same boat here, man. And that's what makes AA so great in this treatment. I said, we're all in the same boat. And the counselor shut the meeting down and he stopped and he said, Kevin, I'm not in your boat. I want you to speak for yourself. And I just about had a little anxiety attack. I literally started hyperventilating because he pulled my covers. Okay, right then and there. And I learned a very valuable lesson. It's very important that the unity in Alcoholics Anonymous is not that we are held together because we're all in the same boat and we all hit the same iceberg and we're all swimming around in the same water and we all have the same disease. That is not what holds us together. Brad, please read the next beautiful paragraph.
The tremendous fact for every one of us is that we have discovered a common solution.
What?
Solution.
Common what?
Solution.
Booyah! Booyah! That's what we have. We have a solution. We have a way out. We have a way out upon which we can join in brotherly and sisterly, harmonious what? What's that next word, Brad?
Solution. No. Sorry, where are we?
That's all right. Brotherly and harmonious. 2 lines up on the bottom there.
Sorry.
Upon which we can join in brotherly and harmonious.
I don't even.
Poor dude. I'm so sorry. I'm putting you on. This is completely my fault. But this is going to play. This is going to play, Brad. Stay with me. Brotherly. 3 lines
sorry.
up.
2 lines down. Harmonious action. Action.
Harmonious what?
Action. Sorry.
Harmonious what?
Action.
Booyah. It does not say brotherly and harmonious meetings. Okay? It does not say brotherly and harmonious 3-topic discussion meetings. It says brotherly and harmonious action. Action in the program of action in the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. That is the way out. Okay? Just going to meetings and wishing things would get better is not recovery from alcoholism. And I learned that the hard way. Just going to meetings and sharing my problems is not recovery from this disease. And I found that one out the hard way, okay? And I would go to these meetings. I would go to these 3-topic disgusting meetings, okay? And I would treat them like group therapy, pop psychology, and I would go and just talk about my issues and somehow think I was going to cathartically feel better, and I didn't. I would go home and want to die and commit suicide, die by suicide in sobriety, thinking, and the biggest lie I ever told myself is I've been to AA and it didn't work. Anybody else ever done that? Anyone else ever sat around in meetings wondering, why does everyone else have this thing? What's wrong with me that I'm not getting this thing? And the reality, brothers and sisters, is that I had not come anywhere near Alcoholics Anonymous. Alcoholics Anonymous is one thing and one thing only. It is a book. The name of this book is Alcoholics Anonymous. Within this book is a program of action on how to do the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous. Those 12 steps, that is AA. And if I'm going to recover here, I must do them. It is not optional. Okay. I know, we say the only requirement for membership is a desire to stop drinking. Yes, that is the requirement for membership. But the requirements for me to recover are much more stringent. You guys with me on that? Much more stringent. Not mean I get to have this deal. Brotherly and harmonious action. This is the great news. The great news this book carries to those who suffer from alcoholism. Beautiful. 6 minutes and 36 seconds. 36 minutes into the study. We're still on page 1. Good, good, perfect. All right. Over to you, Brad.
Top of page 18. An illness of this sort, and we have come to believe it an illness, involves those about us in a way no other human sickness can. If a person has cancer, all are sorry for him and no one is angry or hurt. But not so with the alcoholic illness, for with it there goes annihilation of all the things worthwhile in life. It engulfs all whose lives touch the sufferers. It brings misunderstanding, fierce resentment, financial insecurity, disgusted friends and employers, warped lives of blameless children, and wives and parents. Anyone can increase the list. We hope this volume will inform and comfort those who are or may be affected. There are many. Highly competent psychiatrists who have dealt with us have found it sometimes impossible to persuade an alcoholic to discuss the situation without reserve. Strangely enough, wives, parents, and intimate friends usually find us even more unapproachable than do the psychiatrist and the doctor. But the ex-problem drinker who has found this solution, who is properly armed with facts about himself, can generally win the entire confidence of another alcoholic in a few hours. Until such an understanding is reached, little or nothing can be accomplished.
Okay, so guys, that is why we have we put essential importance on those cycle stories. I want to identify myself as an alcoholic, yes, but both Gail and Victor tonight shared their stories. They were properly armed with facts about themselves, not facts about AA. Okay, I'm not going to win the newcomers' attention with facts about AA. Okay, I'm not going to talk to another alcoholic about their drinking. I'm going to talk to another alcoholic about my drinking. I'm going to tell them how I drink. I'm going to talk to them about how I thought, how I felt. I bet you everyone tonight identified with Gail and identified with Victor and their stories. Why? Because they are real alcoholics speaking the language of the heart, properly armed with facts about themselves. We never want to talk at an alcoholic. And I certainly hope I never talk down to an alcoholic. I want to talk with an alcoholic. One alcoholic talking to another, properly armed with this solution and the facts about myself. You guys with me on that? All right, let's keep going. Brad.
That the man who is making the approach has had the same difficulty, that he obviously knows what he is talking about, that his whole deportment shouts at the new prospect that he is a man with a real answer, that he has no attitude of holier than thou, nothing whatever except the sincere desire to be helpful, that there are no fees to pay, no axes to grind, no people to please, no lectures to be endured. These are the conditions we have found most effective. After such an approach, many take up their beds and walk again. None of us makes a sole vocation of this work, nor do we think its effectiveness would be increased if we did. We feel that elimination of our drinking is but a beginning. A much more important demonstration of our principles lies before us in our respective homes, occupations, and affairs. All of us spend much of our spare time in the sort of effort which we are going to describe. A few are fortunate enough to be so situated that they can give nearly all their time to the work.
Okay, so I often talk about this. There are several lines in our book that I like to use as a baseline benchmark to ask myself, how am I doing when I compare myself to the first 100 members of Alcoholics Anonymous who wrote this book in 1939? Where am I at compared to where they were at? And there's another line there. All of us spend much of our spare time in the type of work we're going to describe, by which they mean working this program, but in particular, they're talking about 12-step work, okay? all of us spend much of our spare time in the type of work we're going to describe. So that's a good question. Am I spending much of my spare time in the type of work that we're going to describe? Now, the difference is, how much spare time do we have? As some of you know, for I'm not married. I don't have children. So I have more spare time than someone who has, 6 kids that they're trying to get to soccer practice and ballet and baseball and art class by the end of the day. Okay. The question is, we all have some level of spare time. Okay. I tend to have more spare time than some. Don't get me wrong. I've got a really busy, active, blessed, and eventful life, but I'm able to spend more of my time in AA than most people. The question for you, and it's really a question for you, maybe a question to talk to your sponsor about. Am I spending much of my spare time in the type of work we're going to describe? I just thought I'd mention that. Back to you, Brad.
If we keep on the way we are going, there is little doubt that much good will result. But the surface of the problem would hardly be scratched. Those of us who live in large cities are overcome by the reflection that close by hundreds are dropping into oblivion every day. Many could recover if they had the opportunity we have enjoyed. How then shall we present that which has been so freely given us? We have concluded to publish an anonymous volume setting forth the problem as we see it. We shall bring to the task our combined experience and knowledge. This should suggest a useful program for anyone concerned with a drinking problem.
So just a very quick piece of AA history. In early AA, they really had 3 ideas. They wanted to do 3 things. They wanted to get funding from the Rockefellers and from other rich people to give charitable donations to them so they could do 3 things. Number 1, they wanted to build a big hospital. Would have been like the world's first treatment center, and they were going to have like a detox and then treatment and then social facilities and living skills and all that type of stuff. Okay. Big hospital they were going to build. That was idea number 1. Idea number 2 was that they were going to actually, and this is before the traditions really took hold, they were going to have a professional class of AAs. Okay. So they were going to have members of Alcoholics Anonymous who were actually paid to go on 12-step work and, walk around in pairs. And, have you heard the good news about Bill and Bob and get paid to go do that work? And then the third idea was that they were going to publish a book. They were going to make a book. And that's what they did. And thank God, as the story goes, they didn't get any funding. They didn't get any charitable organizations because those people could see that money was going to destroy this spiritual entity from the inside out. So guys like John D. Rockefeller Jr. had the foresight to see, if I give you guys millions of dollars, it's going to ruin this whole thing. So thank God we stayed poor for a long time. And the only thing we were able to do, we stayed non-professional, thank God. Okay. And the only thing we were able to do is to publish this book. Okay. Back to you, Brad.
Of necessity, there will have to be discussion of matters medical, psychiatric, social, and religious. We are aware that these matters are, from their very nature, controversial. Nothing would please us so much as to write a book which would contain no basis for contention or argument. We shall do our utmost to achieve that ideal. Most of us sense that real tolerance of other people's shortcomings and viewpoints and a respect for their opinions are attitudes which make us more useful to others. Our very lives as ex-problem drinkers depend upon our constant thought of others and how we may help meet their needs.
Okay, that's a pretty important line. Our very lives. Okay, our lives depend on our constant thought of others and how we may help meet their needs. In particular here, guys, I want to underscore that we need to be thinking about our fellow brother and sister alcoholics, the still suffering alcoholics. We need to be thinking about our sponsees. That's who this is talking about. Okay. I was talking to a fella the other day. I was talking to his mom, actually, this fella, and I was talking to his mom, and his mom was telling me about this fella was in AA, and he was, but he he's not so into the AA thing anymore, but man, he's going to join, this organization, and he's going to, he's volunteering here and he's doing this stuff. And you know, all of these other ideas. Okay. And that's good. It's great, but it's not AA. Okay. And I know for me, that's a dangerous thing when I try to start making exceptions to, you know, I'm going to do AA, but I'm going to do it my way. And I'm going to give back in step 12, but I'm not going to do it in AA. I'm going to do it in other ways. Okay. All I know is that stuff never worked for me, man. I need to be right in the middle of AA. And so when it says our lives as ex-problem drinkers depend on our constant thought of others, what we're talking about are our fellow alcoholics. Okay. And the suffering of our fellow alcoholics. And when I focus my attention there, when I think about the suffering of others, you know, one of my sponsees just listened to his first fifth step. He didn't do a fifth step. He listened to someone else's fifth step. And I said, the magic in listening to someone else's fifth step, brother, is that suddenly all of your problems, all of my problems, all the problems I have, all become blessings. They become blessings as soon as I listen to someone else's problems. You know, if we all were able to get around and say a big table and put all of our problems in a box, and we all put the box on the table and we were all able to kind of look at each other's problems, it's not very likely that I would trade my problems for your problems. Okay. How often would it be that we see each other's problems and I think, man, I love my problems. I've got great problems. Suddenly my problems become blessings. Okay. And it's when I focus on the constant thought of others, in particular, other members of Alcoholics Anonymous, and how we may help meet their needs. Okay. Back to you, Brad.
You may already have asked yourself why it is that all of us became so very ill from drinking. Doubtless you are curious to discover how and why, in the face of expert opinion to the contrary, we have recovered from a hopeless condition.
Recovered. We have recovered. Recovered. All right.
We have recovered from a hopeless condition of mind and body. If you are an alcoholic who wants to get over it, you may already be asking, what do I have to do? It is the purpose of this book to answer such questions specifically. We shall tell you what we have done. Before going into a detailed discussion, it may be well to summarize some points as we see them. How many times people have said to us, I can take it or leave it alone, why can't he? Why don't you drink like a gentleman or quit? That fellow can't handle his liquor. Why don't you try beer and wine? Lay off the hard stuff. His willpower must be weak. He could stop if he wanted to. She's such a sweet girl, I should think he'd stop for her sake. The doctor told him that if he ever drank again, it would kill him, but there he is all lit up again. Now, these are commonplace observations on drinkers, which we hear all the time. Back of them is a world of ignorance and misunderstanding. We see that these expressions refer to people whose reactions are very different from ours. Moderate drinkers.
Okay, guys. So right now we are going to read through 3 very important classifications. These are not classifications of alcoholics. These are classifications of the human race. Okay. We're going to talk today about moderate drinkers, heavy drinkers, and real alcoholics. You know, Dr. Silkworth says that we succumb to the desire again, as so many do. And we enter taking a few drinks that we see others taking with impunity. Other people are able to drink with impunity. Why is it that some people can drink with impunity and Gail drinks and ends up flat on her back with the cold wave of death coming over her? Okay. And I have surfed the cold wave of death many times in my life. Okay. I get it. Why is it that some people can drink with impunity and some cannot? Okay. And right now we're going to talk, and this will take us out to the end of the study, right till 7 p.m. We're going to talk about moderate drinkers, hard drinkers, and real alcoholics. So Brad, first, moderate drinkers, please.
Moderate drinkers have trouble in giving up liquor entirely. If they have good reason for it, they can take it or leave it alone.
Okay, these are people like my parents, man, Alan and Carol. My parents are upstairs in this house right now, and they had a drink. My dad had a beer, and my mom had a glass of wine. They are moderate drinkers. They have never sworn off drinking, ever. Not a single time in their lives have they said, that's it, I'm never going to drink again. not once. Okay. My great grand sponsor, Chuck Chamberlain, has a great saying. If you have ever asked yourself if you might be an alcoholic, it's already too late. If you have already asked yourself if you might be an alcoholic, it's already too late. Because my parents, moderate drinkers, not once have ever asked themselves if they might be alcoholic. Okay. So they do not suffer when they drink, nor do they suffer when they don't drink. Okay. They are moderate drinkers. Okay. So now let's talk about hard drinkers.
Then we have a certain type of hard drinker. He may have the habit badly enough to gradually impair him physically and mentally. It may cause him to die a few years before his time. If a sufficiently strong reason, ill faith, falling in love, change of environment, or the warning of a doctor becomes operative, this man can also stop or moderate, although he may find it difficult and troublesome and may even need medical attention.
Okay, so hard drinker may look like an alcoholic for a period of time, may even get in trouble. It may even impact their health. But what it says, if given sufficient reason, ill health, falling in love, change of environment, the warning of the doctor, or anything else becomes operative, which means more important, the most important thing. This man can stop or moderate if given sufficient reason. Now, let me ask you guys, anyone here ever say to themselves, I'm going to quit because of ill health and then drink again? Anyone here ever say, I'm going to quit because I fell in love and then drink again? Anyone here ever stop because of change of environment? I'm going to move from Calgary. My problem is Calgary. I'm going to move to Edmonton. And you move to Edmonton and you drink again. Anyone here ever said, I'm going to quit drinking or I'm going to lose my job and then drink again and lose the job? Anyone here ever quit drinking because I'm going to lose my job and then lose the job and then drink again anyway? Okay. Anyone here, and Chris Raymer, there's a great AA speaker, Chris Raymer. If you've never listened to Chris Raymer, don't go to sleep tonight until you've listened to Chris R. Okay. We're going to play a little game he likes to play. And we're talking about external circumstances impacting my drinking. So let's try something here. Anyone here ever drink when you were in a great relationship? Anyone here ever drink when you were in a terrible relationship? Anyone here ever drink when you were single? Anyone here ever drink because you loved your job? Anyone here ever drink when you hated your job? Anyone here ever drink when you were unemployed? Okay? The outside external circumstances are not what make me an alcoholic. The thing that makes me an alcoholic are actually the internal spiritual sickness and emotional circumstances within me. Brothers and sisters, when I talk to you about unmanageability of drinking, I do not mean the lost jobs and the wrecked cars and the broken windows. That is not the unmanageability of drinking. The unmanageability of alcoholism is two things: the way that I think and the way that I feel. That is the unmanageability of alcoholism. And the way that I feel makes me think, and the way that I think makes me feel. And that goes on when I drink and when I am not drinking. Hard drinkers, however, are people who do not suffer from that internal spiritual malady. Alcoholism, ISM, internal spiritual malady. Ism, internal spiritual malady. They don't have it, man. So moderate drinkers are people who do not suffer when they drink, and they do not suffer if they don't drink. Hard drinkers are people who do suffer when they drink, but they do not suffer when they don't drink. They stop drinking and they feel better. I stop drinking, I get physically sober, and I get mentally insane. Okay? My grand sponsor, Clancy, used to say, if you're an alcoholic, drinking is not your problem. And if drinking is your problem, you're not an alcoholic. Now that sounds backwards, but alcoholism is a disease that continues on when I'm drinking and when I am not drinking. Heavy drinkers, you take away the booze, they feel better. Alcoholics, real alcoholics like me, you take away the booze, I don't feel better, man. People used to say, Kevin, stop drinking, you'll feel better. And they were right. I felt depression much better when I was sober. I felt anger much better when I was sober. I feel things much more acutely when I'm sober. You guys with me on that? Okay. And the problem is that gross emotional nature within me, that internal spiritual malady, skews my perception. I am unable to distinguish the true from the false. I believe the lie. I've got to get relief from that internal spiritual sickness. I pick up a drink just to get a little bit of ease and comfort, and I'm gone. Okay, so now let's read about page 21. I've seen t-shirts that say, I'm the guy on page 21. And what do they mean? They mean the real alcoholic. What about the real alcoholic?
But what about the real alcoholic? He may start off as a moderate drinker. He may or may not become a continuous hard drinker. But at some stage of his drinking career, he begins to lose all control of his liquor consumption once he starts to drink. Here's the fellow who has been puzzling you, especially in his lack of control. He does absurd, incredible, tragic things while drinking. He is a real Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. He is seldom mild intoxicated. He is always more or less insanely drunk.
Okay, I want to just qualify this. This one line used to really trouble me. He is more or less, he is always more or less insanely drunk. Because I would read that and think, well, hey man, I wasn't always insanely drunk. There were times where I was sober. Maybe I'm not this real alcoholic because I'm looking for a way to get out of this thing. Right? Okay. And I'm slippery, man. I'll find a way out. Here's the deal with that line. I was not always more or less insanely drunk. I was more or less always insanely drunk when I was drinking. Okay. When I was drinking, no one ever had to ask, has Kevin been drinking? It is obvious to everyone when I am drinking. When I am drinking, I am always more or less insanely drunk. I see a lot of nodding heads. We are people who normally would mix for sure. All right. Let's read to you just to the end of this and we'll end it. I don't want to go over time, Brad. So
Okay. So here's the fellow who has been puzzling you. Is that the right spot? Yeah.
yeah.
Here's the fellow who has been puzzling you, especially in his lack of control. He does absurd, incredible, tragic things while drinking. He is a real Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. He is seldom mildly intoxicated. He is always more or less insanely drunk. His disposition while drinking resembles his normal nature but little. He may be one of the finest fellows in the world, yet let him drink for a day, and he frequently becomes disgustingly and even dangerously antisocial. He has a positive genius for getting tight at exactly the wrong moment, particularly when important decisions must be made or engagement kept. He is often perfectly sensible and well balanced concerning everything except liquor, but in that respect he is incredibly dishonest and selfish. He often possesses special abilities, skills, and aptitudes, and has a promising career ahead of him. He uses his gifts to build up a bright outlook for his family and himself, and then pulls the structure down on his head by a senseless series of sprees. He is the fellow who goes to bed so intoxicated he ought to sleep the clock around, yet early next morning he searches madly for the bottle he misplaced the night before. If he can afford it, he may have liquor concealed all over his house to be certain no one gets his entire supply away from him to throw down the waste pipe. As matters grow worse, he begins to use a combination of high-powered sedative and liquor to quiet his nerves so he can go to work. Then comes the day when he simply cannot make it and gets drunk all over again. Perhaps he goes to a doctor who gives him morphine or some sedative with which to taper off. Then he begins to appear at hospitals and sanitariums. This is by no means a comprehensive picture of the true alcoholic, as our behavior patterns vary, but this description should identify him roughly. Why does he behave like this? If hundreds of experiences have shown him that one drink means another debacle with all its attendant suffering and humiliation, why is it he takes that one drink? Why can't he stay on the water wagon? What has become of the common sense and willpower that he still sometimes displays with respect to other matters? Perhaps there never will be a full answer to these questions. Opinions vary considerably as to why the alcoholic reacts differently from normal people. We are not sure why. Once a certain point is reached, little can be done for him. We cannot answer the riddle. We know that while the alcoholic keeps away from drink, as he may do for months or years, he reacts much like other men. We're equally positive that once he takes any alcohol, whatever, into his system, something happens both in the bodily and mental sense, which makes it virtually impossible for him to stop. The experience of any alcoholic will abundantly confirm this.
Okay, so we're going to stop there. We're going to stop there for tonight, guys. It's 7 p.m. right on the dot. And so next week, we're going to do a bit of a review on moderate drinker, heavy drinker, real alcoholic. And then we're going to talk in depth about our solution. And we're going to see the magical moment at which Dr. Carl Jung gives this solution to Roland Hazard, and how that solution then transformed into what we have today, what we are so blessed with today, the miracle of Alcoholics Anonymous in my life, and I presume in yours as well. So with that said, guys, let's close the meeting tonight. I like to close with the Lord's Prayer. So we'll do that together, and then don't run away, guys, because my favorite part of the week, thing I love to do more than anything, is we'll go around the room. Everyone will have a chance to just say hello, introduce yourselves, and let us know where you're calling from tonight, because we've got people calling from all over the world, and it's one of the coolest things. So let's say the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen.
Amen.
Ooh, yeah.